All right, let's go live. Hey, everybody. Chuck Holton here. I'm coming to you from the beach in Panama today. We have a hot zone tour going. We got about 17 or 18 people who showed up that are viewers of the hot zone to spend a 5-day trip just sort of chilling with us up here in Panama. So we stopped by the beach on the way from the city today, and everybody's down there enjoying the Pacific Ocean. We're gonna have lunch here in a little bit, and then we're gonna go up to the valley where we live, and so we're excited to spend some time with viewers like you. And we do trips like this from time to time. We have another one to Panama scheduled in April. Is that right, babe? And then we also have a longer trip to Armenia, which I would highly recommend that you check out. If you're interested in those, you can go over to uh, just send an email to info@holtonnews.com and we can get you the information about it. Info@holtonnews.com. So we're going to be talking about this Sun USA article called Going to War, U.S. Military Preparing to Seize Ports and Airfields in Venezuela as Trump declares full-scale war on drug cartels. So we're going to be breaking that down for you. But before we do that, I've been doing a lot of research lately on uh, Medicare. And actually, I was kind of surprised that there's so many different plans out there for Medicare. Just saying the word kind of makes people twitch. You get all these mailers and scammy sales calls and stuff, but it's like it was designed to confuse you into just giving up. And a lot of people do. And that means they end up paying thousands more every year, or worse, losing access to their doctors and their meds. And that's where this company I found called Chapter comes in. These guys, it really is just the difference between commission and salaried advisors. There are lots of Medicare advisors out there, and they get a commission to sell you the fattest, program that they can, but it's not the right one for you. I didn't realize there are 24,000 Medicare plans out there. And so the advisors at Chapter are salaried, so they're not sales vultures. They're working for you, not the insurance companies. So it actually makes a big difference. And I had a call with them. They kind of walked me through and explained everything to me. I'm really amazed at what they do. Here's how it works. You call this number up above here, and a real human being picks up, and then they walk you through everything step by step. It takes under an hour, and you'll know exactly where you stand. There's no pressure, there's no gimmicks. If you're already on the right plan, they'll just tell you that. And on average, people who go through Chapter save $1,100 a year. That's just amazing. $1,100 a year. So make sure that you're on the right plan. We're in the season that you got to get signed up for Medicare. And so don't wait. You don't want to miss it. Call Chapter now. Here's the number again, 636-812-6714, or go to askchapter.org/hotzone. So I really recommend it. I mean, I remember when my mom was trying to get on Medicare, just all of it was unbelievable trying to help her with that paperwork. I was like, do they have a committee of people who just sits around and tries to make this stupider? Because it's like it was designed to make you want to drive your car off a bridge, and maybe it was, but Chapter will help you out with that. So anyway, thank you very much to Chapter for sponsoring this podcast. Now, before I get to the Sun article, I want to talk about what President Trump tweeted to Hamas. I say tweeted, put on Truth Social, whatever you call that. He socialed or he truthed. Is it a truth or a social? I don't know. Anyway, this is what he said, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to go down here to the bottom and say every country has signed on. He's talking about the peace deal that he's trying to get Hamas to accept. An agreement must be reached with Hamas by Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Washington, D.C. time. Every country has signed on. If this last chance agreement is not reached, all hell, there we go again. All hell like no one has ever seen before will break out against Hamas. There will be peace in the Middle East one way or the other. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. That's because Hamas has basically rejected the peace deal already. They've said this deal doesn't do anything for us, so we're not interested. And so President Trump is resorting to his kind of modus operandi, which is threaten and give them an ultimatum. Like those have worked so well in the past. I mean, how many ultimatums has he given Hamas, much less Vladimir Putin and Venezuela and China and everybody else? He loves his ultimatums, but because he doesn't really back them up. I mean, how many times has he literally used the same words? All hell will break out in Gaza. And the United States really hasn't done much except just go, okay, Israel, keep doing what you've been doing for the last 2 years. And so I doubt that, again, there's going to be a peace deal with Hamas. I would love it. I hope there is, but I kind of doubt it because the guys who are making the decision about whether or not to have a peace deal are actually benefiting from the war. And so they don't have a reason to have a peace deal. Anyway, so I just wanted to talk about that real quick. Also, yesterday I talked about the selfie flotilla, which made it to Gazan waters, was immediately apprehended by the IDF. The 500 or so activists and people that were on board were taken ashore, given a sandwich, and they're going to be deported, just sent out of the country. They should put them in prison. What they should do, at least for a couple of months. Just put him in prison for a couple of months. And of course, Greta Thunberg is the most well-known person that was on that flotilla. I've got the interception video here as they were coming in. They've got the Palestinian flag flying and on one of their boats. So when that happened, after Greta was intercepted. So Greta was abducted here. This is her abduction, quote unquote. She's got her little Hamas scarf on. She puts her little Kermit the Frog hat on, and the IDF very nicely gives her a jacket. And that I hesitated whether I should play the video of the abductions of some of the people on October 7th into Gaza. Because obviously that would get me demonetized. It's too graphic. And so that's what an abduction actually looks like. If you've seen it, you won't forget it. What we just saw there with Greta, that's not an abduction. She's being detained. She was very nicely, they didn't tackle her. They didn't handcuff her even. They put her on a boat and they took her to shore in Ashdod, and they're going to put her on an airplane and send her back to Sweden. Now, the people in Sweden are not all excited about that. And I wanted to play you this message that Greta pre-recorded before she even left on the flotilla, and let you listen to what she said, because just watch to the end. This is funny.
My name is Greta Thunberg. I'm a citizen of Sweden. If you are watching this video, I have been abducted and taken against my will by Israeli forces. Our humanitarian mission was non-violent and abiding by international law. Please tell my government to demand my and the others' immediate release.
My name is Joachim Lamotte and I'm a Swedish citizen. If you see this video, Greta Thunberg has been abducted by Israeli forces. And I have a message from the Swedish people to the Israeli government. Please keep her. We have had her so many years in Sweden and we cannot stand it anymore. So you are doing us a really big favor right now. Thank you very much.
So the Swedes kind of see that as a favor to them and would like the IDF to keep Greta. And I do think it would be a good idea. I think you want to deter this kind of activity, then you got to impose more painful costs on them to do so. And so that somebody recommended yesterday, and I thought this was a great idea. They should have actually just at the last minute acted like they were going to intercept the boats and then go over there and they, you know what, we changed our mind. Go ahead into Gaza. Yeah, we don't mind. Go ahead. Just go into Gaza and see what happens. And then just watch and just let them go in there. I mean, some of them probably would have been killed. The boats might have been sank by Palestinians that were desperate to get on board and sail away or whatever. Greta probably would have found a boyfriend or 10. And, that might be a first for her. But so it that would definitely impose a more painful cost on them. They probably would have lost all their boats. And as it turns out, the IDF boarded all of those boats and searched them. And there's one thing that they didn't find anything of. They found a little bit of weed, maybe a little bit of MDMA, little some party drugs and things like that. But what they did not find was any aid. As it turns out, these boats actually weren't carrying any aid. There was no aid on these boats that were supposed to be going to Gaza to break the siege and bring aid to the people. So, as I pointed out yesterday, they spent a good $500,000 on this boondoggle, on this PR stunt. And that $500,000 could have fed 40,000 people for a month. But they didn't. That says nothing about the aid they could have carried down there. So again, Greta and her cronies are being exposed as absolutely fake, caring nothing for the Palestinian people. They don't care. They don't care about the Palestinian people. This is the cause du jour. Greta and her compatriots are full-time paid protesters. They make money protesting. Greta is worth quite a bit of money now. And they just go from one cause to the next. I've met a lot of those people over the years as I've been covering these protests around the country. And that's just their job. So they've been exposed once again as the ridiculous frauds that they are. And let's leave it at that and move on. So, are we going to war with Venezuela? Again, let's go back to this Sun article. The Sun says, going to war. U.S. military preparing to seize ports and airfields in Venezuela as Trump declares full-scale war on drug cartels. Well, let's run a bayonet through this souffle and see what collapses here, okay? Because full-scale war is actually not what the administration put out. And I mean, now President Trump, we all know, said stuff. He says lots of things, but we kind of have to take what he says with a grain of salt many times. And because he's just framing the argument when he does that. And that's his style. That's what he does. So what does this mean, actually? Well, in the language of the memo to Congress, the administration called it a non-international armed conflict with the cartels. So that's like a specific legal framing here. It's not a formal declaration of war. Several other outlets describe it that way. They act like it's a full-scale war, as in if it's a declaration of war, we're going to be sending in the Marines and all that. But it's more of a formal policy term. And so the headline kind of starts out a little bit deceiving, but then it gets worse. As it's preparing to seize ports and airfields, I haven't seen any sourcing on that. And let me just point out that right now, as we speak, I'm sitting on the beach in a place called Farallon on the Pacific side of Panama. On the night of December 20th, the early morning of December 20th, 1989, I was in a C-130 aircraft about 500 feet above where I'm standing right now, right at about 1 o'clock in the morning. And there's an airfield that's off to my left. And what we were doing is we were parachuting onto that airfield as the kickoff gambit of Operation Just Cause, the invasion of Panama. Now, Panama was a country that we actually had relations with. We actually had, 22,000 troops stationed here. It might have been the only time in history that we invaded a country that we already occupied. But we had bases all over this country. However, the elected president, Omar Torrijos, had died under suspicious circumstances in a plane crash, and the man who took his place was a man named Manuel Noriega. And Noriega had been a employee of the CIA for years, but when he took power, he kind of started playing both sides of the fence, and he was allowing Colombian cartels to launder their money through Panama and various other criminal activities. So President George H.W. Bush decided to take him out and sent us down here to do that. Now, we were not coming to kill Panamanians. That was definitely not what we were here to do. We were here to find and seize Manuel Noriega and take him out and take him to justice. So we were kind of acting as a sort of military SWAT team in a way. And to do that, we had to neutralize the diehard, what we called PDF, which was the Panamanian Defense Forces, that would have fought us as we were trying to do that. So we parachuted in to this airfield that's right over here. And we had some pretty gnarly firefights at the beginning. We ended up with, I think, 9 of our own killed. I think we had 9 guys killed in that first, couple days, the engagements. And there were a couple hundred PDF forces that died as well in that fight. And then we took up blocking positions on the roads and the airfields, and we had another group of soldiers that took over, did similar things in Panama City and over in Colón on the Caribbean side. And you can hear the plane going over right now because it's still an active airfield here at Rio Hato. Anyway, long and the short of it was we invaded the country. Took about 3 weeks before we finally got our hands on Manuel Noriega, got him to give himself up. And then we left. We packed up and left, and we installed a democratically elected government. We helped them, gave them advice on how to rewrite their constitution and make a new constitution that would be more in keeping with modern Western standards. And they're actually, the constitution they came up with, I like a lot. One of the things it says is that all religions are welcome in Panama so long as they do not offend the Christian faith, which I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. But if you take that as a model, that invasion, and you look at what it took for us to come into a country which at that time had 2.5 million people and take over this country, hold it for 3 weeks. It took tens of thousands of troops, probably close to 30,000 troops for us to do that. It took a tremendous amount of air power. It took helicopter gunships and fast movers, A-10s, some armored vehicles, and a whole lot of logistics, whole lot of planning. Now, if we apply that model to what's going on in Venezuela, I don't think there's much evidence that we are preparing to seize ports and airfields in Venezuela, because if it were real, you would see it echoed in preparations that were being made, and there would be a lot more preparations being made than what we see right now. So this is speculative at best. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. There's always a non-zero chance that something like that could happen. But just from having, I was on a jump clearing team. I was on a team that was specially trained to seize airfields and other, ports and things like that. So I know what I'm talking about, and I know what it takes to do that. Now, some of that training could be going on in the U.S. right now, and doubtless there are jump clearing teams in the U.S. that are amping up their training just in case. The operation that started Operation Just Cause on December 20th, 1989, we actually started training for that mission in September of 1989, and we trained very hard all the way up until the day that we left. So there may be some training going on to that end in the U.S., but that doesn't even mean that the United States is serious about doing it. It just means we want to be prepared in case the civilian leadership of the United States decides that's what we need to do. But there would have to go out notices to mariners, air tasking alerts, all sorts of logistics pre-positioned, to try to make something like that happen. And Venezuela is a much larger country. We're talking about 40 million people. So it would not be just cut and dry. Now, we don't have to take over the entire country to take out Maduro. There's, we put a $50 million reward on his head. It's not out of the realm of possibility that there are some people looking at that number and thinking, I could probably pay my bills for that. And I happen to know what Maduro is planning to do tomorrow. And so maybe I'll make a phone call or two and see if I can collect that reward. That's the reason you put a big reward on his head. I saw one news item that from a Venezuelan source claiming that we had raised that amount to $100 million. I have not seen any corroboration of that, but there are, you can imagine, a tremendous amount of rumors flying around in Venezuela, right? As a matter of fact, I want to show you some of the things that are happening in Venezuela. And if we go down here to there, this is a cell phone video that was posted on a Venezuelan chat board in Spanish. And I picked it up and thought, whoa, this is something interesting. Take a look at this. What we're looking at are military vehicles in Venezuela. And this one right here in particular is an anti-ship missile. I'm going to stop it right there. That's an anti-ship missile, Soviet one. It's I believe that is likely a P-15 Termit. The NATO designation for that is an SSN-2 Styx anti-ship cruise missile. Now, what does that mean? What is a cruise missile? What are we seeing here? And I also, if you finish the video out, you can determine about where they are. If you watch here, you can see that sign right there. It says Buen Viaje, and it says La Cabrera on that sign. And they're going into a tunnel. Or actually, that's a toll booth. So I looked up where La Cabrera is, and it's outside of Caracas, going out to toward Valencia, toward the Colombian border, a little ways. And there are several La Cabreras, so I can't quite pinpoint the place, but it's out that way somewhere. Now, let's talk about this missile here. The Soviet P-15 Termit is a Cold War leftover. Let me go back to my camera here. It's a Cold War leftover, and so it's an older missile, but it has a large warhead on it. It's about 500-pound warhead. That weapon system, we've seen that Venezuelans have these missiles. There's some possibility this could be a silkworm missile, but I think it's a Styx. Nevertheless, we're talking about a fairly good-sized warhead. It's big, it's slow, subsonic. It skims the surface of the ocean, and it's like I said, about 500 kilograms, so over 1,000-pound warhead. Sorry. If one hits a destroyer in the wrong spot, it could cripple or sink a Navy destroyer. The problem they have is that these things use active radar to seek their targets, and that makes them very easy to jam or decoy, much easier than modern anti-ship missiles. But they still work if they were to sort of flood the zone with, they shoot 50 of them at one ship. that ship's not going to be able to, it'll get task saturated, won't be able to shoot everything down. Modern battle groups in the Navy are built to handle this kind of threat. They have layered defenses, long range, Aegis missiles can engage these sea skimming targets. Medium range ESSM or SM2 missiles can intercept at closer range. And then if those miss, we always have the Phalanx Sea Whiz, which is like that R2-D2 looking thing with a Vulcan cannon on it that can kill things very close, track and kill them with radar. Not to mention they can employ chaff, which is just metallic confetti that they shoot out that kind of forms a decoy and breaks the missile's radar lock if it works. So it's not likely that obviously it shows that the Venezuelans are moving these things around, getting them in place, preparing them to try to defend their homeland. That's all stuff that the United States would have to deal with if we decided to actually take and hold ground in Venezuela. Now, the biggest reason I think that we're not going to actually do that is because it would pretty much sink President Trump's hopes of winning a Nobel Peace Prize. But let's say that he did. Let's say just he's declared full-scale war on the cartels. He's also said before that he believes that the government of Venezuela is the cartel. They call it the cartel of the suns, Cartel de los Soles. And there's a lot of truth in that. Without a doubt, the elites in Venezuela make a lot of money from drug trafficking. A lot of that filters down into the economy and it kind of props up the current regime, especially as their oil revenues dry up. So let's say that President Trump said, okay, that's it. We're sending in the Marines. We're going to do that. What would it take? Well, we would have to take ports and airfields. The ports would probably be taken by Marines. Airfields would probably be taken by Army Rangers. That's kind of one of our specialties. A parachute in on top of it. We used to train to clear runways. You parachute on top of the runway, and then you clear the runway to make sure it's open. And then you hold blocking positions around the airfield to safeguard the airfield from attack. And then you allow aircraft, American-friendly aircraft, to land and drop off a lot more troops and equipment and things like that. So that's how that would go. To keep that from happening, enemies will put concertina wire, the slinky barbed wire, on the airfield, and we'd have to find that and remove it. Sometimes they'll park heavy machinery like bulldozers or earth movers or something on the airfield so nobody can land there. So as part of our training, we had to learn to hotwire and drive heavy machinery. And that was something we did on a periodic basis while I was in the Rangers. They'd take us out and put us on a bulldozer, put us on an earth mover, whatever, teach us how to run them, how to hotwire them, and, get them off the runway. So they never really knew what we were going to face in terms of, what kind of skills would we need in order to accomplish our mission. And so when there wasn't a war on, being in the Rangers was one of the coolest jobs in the world because all we did was learn cool stuff. And it's like our leaders would sit around and go, well, what don't they know how to do that they might need to know someday? And let's train them on that. So in addition to the going to the range and firing 500,000 rounds a year and shooting every type of known weapon, both friendly and enemy weapons, learning to identify and how to disable enemy weaponry and machinery, armor, stuff like that, learning how to shoot down aircraft, learning how to kill people and break things really, really, really well. In addition to that, they taught us how to drive motorcycles and how to drive heavy equipment and how to drive boats. And they taught us how to pick locks and how to break windows. And just like, I would make a really good criminal if I wanted to. And one of the reasons why I'm not a really good criminal is because they also worked really hard on discipline. To be one of the most lethal units in the military, you also have to be one of the most disciplined units in the military so that you can turn it on and turn it off. Being able to turn it off is very important because at times we had guys that struggled with that who would, get in a bar fight or something in downtown on the weekend and then go out to their car and grab a tear gas grenade and go toss it into the saloon and clear that place out. Or they'd get in running gun battles with people they didn't like up and down Victory Drive in Fort Benning. And those kinds of things always kind of put a little stain on the Ranger ethos. So they worked very, very, very hard on self-discipline. I mean, every single day in the Rangers, you repeat the Ranger Creed. Readily will I display the intestinal fortitude to drive on the Ranger mission and complete the mission, though I be the lone survivor. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And I, though that still informs my life today. I got a lot of what I got out of the military. Obviously, when I got out of the Rangers after 4 years of active duty, I knew how to kill people and break things really well, but there wasn't much of a civilian market for that at the time. And so I kind of felt like I had wasted that. But what I found was that I I actually benefited a lot from the discipline angle of what I learned in the military. So anyway, those Venezuelan anti-ship missiles are all part of the preparations that Venezuela is making. This is a boon for Nicolas Maduro because typically in a wartime, whoever is the leader gets a real boost in his ratings. And we've seen that in Venezuela now. Nicolas Maduro has gotten a boost in his ratings. But I do not believe that we're going to see a major invasion anytime soon. So, folks, do me a favor and hit that like button. If you like this podcast and you're getting a lot out of it, it would mean a lot to me if you would just go boop the button there and hit that like button because that tells YouTube more people need to check out this content. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And if you would, go over to chuckholton.com where you can find a lot of extra content. You can sign up to be a supporter and you can support the channel over there. Or you can do it here on YouTube. I see several people have left 20 here. Angie gave $20 as a super chat. Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much, Angie. And MM, of course, very faithful giver. I appreciate you, Mike. Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to hopefully have some good news for you on the nonprofit front here pretty quick. So now I want to go over and hit the questions real quick because if you guys go to the effort of asking questions, I want to go to the effort of answering them for you. So let me go find the questions real fast and see what we got over there. And then I'm going to get going. We got lunch coming. They can go ahead and serve lunch. They don't need to wait on me. Christopher asks, is the situation in Venezuela as bad as it was in Panama back when the U.S. invaded there? I would say it's probably worse in many ways, Chris. And Christian Kiefer says, why would we invade Venezuela? Well, again, I don't think we will. But if we were going to invade Venezuela, it's because Venezuela is serving as a transshipment hub for not just drugs that are going into the United States, but terrorists and lots of other shenanigans as well. Now, I also need to mention that I think Russia would love it and Iran would love it if we got engaged in a shooting war in Venezuela because it would distract America from the wars that are going on overseas, and it would give Russia a new lease on life if we weren't as engaged over there. But I have to say, and this is probably the most important part of this whole live today, I think it's far more likely that the United States is going to be assisting Israel in striking Iran again than it is that the United States is going to be striking Venezuela anytime soon. Now, it's very likely that we will hit more not fishing boats, but drug boats that look like fishing boats that are offshore Venezuela bringing drugs, transporting drugs north. Very likely we'll do more of that. We've hit about 4 of those now, and there's no reason why we would stop. That should continue. It's also likely that we hit targets inside Venezuela if we find drug labs or transshipment points or something like that. We strike things onshore. Venezuela couldn't do anything about that. The only thing Venezuela could do that could cause some problems for the United States would be to strike shipping off the coast of Venezuela in the Caribbean Sea or in the Atlantic there. Do basically what the Houthis have been doing by using those missiles that they have to strike not at U.S. Navy targets, but container shipping, and try to shut down, make it more difficult for the supply chains around the world to operate. That's asymmetric warfare, sort of maritime insurgency, if you will, and that's a possibility. But I don't think Russia would come to their aid. I don't think Iran would come to their aid. I don't think China would come to their aid. China has assets in the region. Russia has a lot of Wagner Group contractors in Venezuela. Cuba has troops in Venezuela. But I think we would be pretty cautious not to be hitting any of those guys if we could avoid it. So I think it's safe to say we might strike a few targets on land, but there's not a lot that Venezuela could really do about that. Okay. Patrick Wickersham asks, have you ever been through government shutdown while serving, and what effect do you think it had on the troops? I have not. My son has. And, they act like, oh gosh, the troops are going to go without pay and everything. Well, I'm pretty sure that would be a real death knell for the careers of a lot of politicians. And so they're not going to let that happen. I saw a thing today that said that the government shutdown is costing Americans $400 million a day. My question is, how much is it saving us a day not operating all this? Our government is so unbelievably bloated, and the government shutdown does not affect what are considered to be essential services. Even the VA is still operating. So why should we really care? Let them shut it down. I'm perfectly happy with that. That's just my opinion, but I don't mind at all that they're shutting down the government. Now, I'm not a federal employee, but as far as I'm concerned, we have far too many federal employees anyway, and maybe that'll encourage some of them to take early retirement and go find something productive to do. Broski Bear says, the reason we're being told we might invade Venezuela is narco trafficking, but don't you think it's really about oil to eliminate Russia and China influence from the region? If we invaded Venezuela, it would be more for that reason. But again, I don't think that we'll do it. Alex Smollinger says, do you think Brazil will get involved if U.S. and Venezuela get into a war? No. Brazil has troops on the border with Venezuela. I was down there in Guyana a few weeks ago. And Brazil has moved troops up to the border because they don't want Venezuela driving through Brazil to take Guyana. And that's the only way they could. There are no roads between Venezuela and Guyana, even though they share a border that's 600 miles long. That's because it's just untrammeled jungle out there. There's no roads. So Venezuela would not be able to invade Guyana like they'd like to. They've already claimed that they own 2/3 of Guyana without driving through Brazil, and Brazil's not going to allow that. So that's the only role that Brazil would play most likely in that. Jeffrey Rizzo says, greetings from the Valley of the Sun in beautiful sunny Arizona. If it kicks off in Europe with Russia, will China then go for Taiwan? Have they worked this out together? That's a real possibility. Will we suffer cyber attacks? Absolutely. We will. And we are. I mean, there are cyber attacks happening all the time, but they would be amped up without a doubt if Russia goes to war with NATO, etc. Fuzzfire says, could we send in a spec ops team and take Maduro out without a full-on war? It's not out of the realm of possibility. Delta Force trains for specific situations just like that. But Maduro is very paranoid. And he surrounded himself with a lot of Russian Wagner Group troops. So likely, if we did that, we would be getting in firefights with Russian troops and killing lots of Russian troops. It wouldn't be the first time we have done that. We did that in Syria and absolutely wasted about 300 Wagner troops several years ago as they came too close to one of our bases. But so that would be definitely have to factor into the equation if we decided to send in a special ops team and take him out. We'd have to have very good intelligence on where he's going to be, someplace where we could do that, and then it would definitely be bloody because he's surrounded himself with. He doesn't trust his own troops to protect him, so he has Cuban and Russian troops that are around him protecting him now, and that obviously there would be some international implications to us doing that. Alex Smollinger says, do you think Russia gave Venezuela nuclear warheads? No, I do not. Russia's not going to do that. And so Russia would like there to be a war in Venezuela. They are encouraging Venezuela to be belligerent, hoping that they get the United States involved in a war in Venezuela just to dilute our attention from what's going on in Ukraine. So that's all. Thank you, Angie. I really appreciate your prayers for protection as well. Jake says, why now? Aren't we also going to fight Iran with Israel? I think it is much more likely that we strike Iran again than it is that we send troops on the ground into Venezuela. And I mean, that could happen tonight. And if you look at the preparations that are being made right now over in that part of the world, Israel and the United States are ramping up for something big. And I believe it could be another strike on Iran. But we've also put about 30 fuel tankers in the Mediterranean, which is unprecedented. That's a little strange. And so if you kind of read between the lines there a little bit, my read on that is that why do you put fuel tankers in? Because we might need to be refueling our aircraft for them to extend their range. We have a bunch of aircraft in Europe and we have a bunch of aircraft in the Middle East. If something kicks off in a NATO country and we have to go help there, we might shift some of our assets from the Middle East over there, and we would need those refueling assets to do that. If something is about to kick off with Iran again, we might want to shift some of our assets from Europe over there. So again, those same ones would come in handy. Tom Bergens asked, Chuck, were you a Ranger in the late 1980s? I was, from 87 to 1991. I was in the 75th Ranger Regiment. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate the $50. That's very kind of you. That really helps keep us doing what we're doing because this is kind of my full-time thing now. Lori W. says, Chuck, could you do a live on what's happening at the Mexican border and cartel troubles? We should do that. I'm trying to find a time to get up there and do it on the ground with Oscar Blue Ramirez. But I just, the rest of my year is pretty well booked out. I probably will go back to Israel one more time and Armenia one more time before the end of this year. But other than that, my schedule is pretty full. So may not get to it this year. We'll see. Cheese on Top says, what could India want if conflict breaks out worldwide? India? That's a good question. Oh, you kind of stumped me on that one. I'd have to think about that a little bit. That's a curveball for sure. So don't know. All right, folks. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to have to cut it off there because we've got people waiting for lunch here. If you, again, would like to join us on one of these adventures, we do several of them a year. We have a trip to Panama here coming next April, and we have a trip to Armenia next June. You can get on one or both of those trips just by sending a message to info@holtonnews.com or going to the link that the moderators are putting up in the chat box there. And the link is also in the description of this video. So make sure you check out Chapter, our sponsor. Like I said, I mean, if you're at that age, you need to sign up for Medicare. If you already have Medicare and you're not sure you have the right plan, Chapter is actually a really good option for you to get on a better plan. I didn't realize there are 24,000 different Medicare plans out there. How in the world could you find the right one? And most people are not on the best plan for them. So go check that out. And that link is also in the description here. So stay tuned. And we will see you guys next time. Take care.